That out of there. Welcome to another IAEI News Live. My name is Thomas Dimitrovich. And yes, today we're going to talk about 210.52. We'll use the 2023 code, but I will have NFPA link open. Topic for today is 210.52 dwelling unit receptacle outlets, and it all starts now. Welcome back. Okay, so I'm excited about today because, 210.52 is a pretty big, section of the NEC. And my opinion only, remember everything you hear, everything you hear here, hopefully started up here, comes out here, and it's all from the heart. In my opinion, when we are placing receptacles, I would hope that we go a little bit above and beyond the bare minimum requirements. I know in the house that I'm in, they did that. And now they did that for the most part. There are a couple walls in this house that I'm like, this needed one, and there's not one there. But they went hog wild in a lot of these areas, a lot of these rooms, and I'll tell you what, I used the bejeebers out of them. So we are going to talk about 210.52 and receptacles, and we're just gonna, what I want to do is I want to walk down through. If you've got questions, please put them in the chat. Leverage the bejeebers out of the chat. All right. So hopefully you'll do that. I just want to make sure that I've got some things covered here. And yep. All right. Let's do this. Okay. So first, let's take a look at 210.52. Now, when I look at the title, it's dwelling unit receptacle outlets. So the first thing, in my opinion, the first thing we've got to do is understand what is a receptacle outlet, right? If I go to, and where do we go, and where do we find that? We will find that in the defined terms. Now there's an outlet. Let's look at what is the definition of an outlet first. Definition of an outlet. And I don't know why. There it is. Definition of an outlet. A point on the wiring system at which current is taken to supply utilization equipment. That is an outlet. Now, there are different types of outlets. You have lighting outlets, and a lighting outlet is defined as an arrangement of incandescent lamps, electric discharge lighting, or other electrically powered light sources to outline or call attention to certain features such as the shape of a building or the decoration. Oh, that's an outline lighting. No, that's not an outlet lighting. That's an outline lighting. Let's look at receptacle outlet. Boy, you would have thought that they would have outlet, comma, receptacle, outlet, comma, I don't know. Let's go to receptacle outlet. I probably should search, but I'm not. So there's a good public input for all of y'all out there. Outlet, comma, receptacle. But then I see what they did. They put receptacle outlet because there's a receptacle weight supporting ceiling, WSCR, and then there is a receptacle outlet. I still say it should be outlet, comma, receptacle. I don't know. I'm just going out on a limb. All right, so receptacle outlet is an outlet. So we know what an outlet is because we looked at the definition already, where one or more receptacles are installed. All right, so, we got some people in. Michael Hofkin in the house. Thank you for joining us. How do I make this? There we go. Ah, boy. Oh, look, watch this. Boom, look at that. I got my chats right over here. So, understanding the term outlet, receptacle outlet, and receptacles are critical to understanding the NEC rules. Oh, Michael, also some rules apply to branch circuits, not the outlets. Exactly right. So we got Fred B, we got Michael Hofkin, we've got David Engelhardt. How can I miss? Yes, don't forget to define receptacle outlet. All right. So we know what an outlet is. We know what a receptacle outlet is, but do we know what a receptacle is? And why can't I? Oh, let me just click on with my finger. So here is a receptacle outlet. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? Watch this. Watch this. Boom. There is your receptacle. A contact device installed at the outlet. I'm using an NFPA link. If you don't have NFPA link, you need to get it because it is the cat's meow. Really helps you in using it. You can download it. You don't have to be online, all that jazz. So receptacle, a contact device installed at the outlet for the connection of an attachment plug or for the direct connection of electrical utilization equipment designed to mate with the corresponding contact device. A single receptacle is a single contact device with no other contact device on the same yoke or strap. And a multiple receptacle is two or more contact devices on the same yoke or strap. Now, if you think about this, I've had some people make some mistakes, right? So like I'll call it a duplex receptacle, right? Let me find my, I've got a slide on this. In fact, I'm going to go back to the 2020 code presentation because I had a receptacle outlet. I had receptacle 210, maybe try 100 installation receptacle, receptacle receptacle 1 and 2 family NEC receptacle maintenance. There's an interesting topic. Receptacle, let's check this one out. Might be able to download this. Yeah, here we go. Let's just look at this one. Nope, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, there we go, receptacle PowerPoint. I'm looking for my PowerPoint on receptacles because you have, if you have some fun, here's a poll question. Oh, you got a poll question? Michael Hofkin, I want to have fun. Yeah, love poll questions. Let's just bring it on up. Travis Holderman, hey, welcome. Michael says, if I install 2 duplex receptacles in a 2-gang box, how many receptacle outlets do I have? Man, that is a very good question. And I'll add to that. but you answer that. Second part to that question is, how many receptacles do you have? Okay, so Michael Hofkin, 2 duplex receptacles in a 2-gang box. How many receptacle outlets do I have? And then second part to that question is, how many receptacles do you have? 2 very important pieces. So to fully understand the requirements in 210.52, Travis Holderman, to really understand that, and Mr. Joseph Wages in the house, you've got to understand the defined term of what a receptacle is, a receptacle outlet, and an outlet. All right, 3 very critical pieces of the puzzle. My PowerPoint is just not gonna download, so it don't matter. Don't need it, don't want that. I'm okay with it. You know what I could do? Let's do this. All right, so I'm gonna let that fester. Please use the chats and answer those 2 poll questions. Okay, so we know what a receptacle is, and we know what a receptacle outlet is, and we know what an outlet is. We know those terms because we went to Article 100. I'm gonna come back and visit the definition of a receptacle once we start getting some comments on the poll question. So let's go back over to 210.52. Dwelling unit receptacle outlet. So what do we know? We know, oh, here's another one. To apply 210.52, we have to understand this, the title of this section is dwelling unit receptacle outlets. So 210.52 is going to apply to dwelling units. So we can go to the defined term for a dwelling unit. Dwelling unit, and that would be under the D's. Docking facilities, dwelling unit. Here it is. I am having a challenge with my internet. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna connect to my fin so I don't clobber my feed. I'm not dropping any frames, so that's a good thing. All right, so we go to dwelling units, and a dwelling unit says a single unit providing complete and independent living facilities for one or more persons, including permanent provisions for living, sleeping, cooking, and sanitation. So if I have to have sanitation, I have to have cooking, sleeping, and living. If I have cooking, sleeping, and living, but no sanitation, got an outhouse out back, not a dwelling unit, apparently. But it doesn't say where the sanitation has to be in it. Well, it says a single unit providing complete and independent living facilities for one or more persons, including permanent provisions for living, sleeping, cooking, and sanitation. Now, I could have, and I was just talking to somebody on the phone, I think it was John, and we were talking about those hotels that are like the, has the suite, they have a kitchen, they have permanent, they have living, they have sleeping, and they have cooking, and they have sanitation. So technically, each of those in that hotel, what do they call it? Like a suite, like a Homewood Suites or one of those types of things. Those are dwelling units, individual dwelling units, and would meet that defined term. I would love to have your perspective on that. So the other question is, you have a hotel that has, say, is like a Homewood Suites. Each one of those suites that meets the definition of a dwelling unit would you say each one of those units are dwelling units? Anyway, and would have to meet the provisions of 210.52. Okay, so let's go down to 210.52. 210.52. So now some key, remember, terminology is critical. You have to understand the definition of an outlet, receptacle, and dwelling unit. 210.52 applies to dwelling unit receptacle outlets, not receptacles, receptacle outlets. Now, the parent text of 210.52 says the section provides requirements for, now we're getting specific, 125 volt, 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets. Boom. That means USB is not covered here, right? These aren't USB receptacle outlets, outlet requirements. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a receptacle outlet with a receptacle that provides a 15 and 20 amp, say, receptacle for these spaces that are covered to meet these requirements that has USB as part of it, but it's not required to. Okay, so we're talking 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets, not 30, not 50, not 60, just your standard receptacle outlets or dwelling units. Travis, I think you have one receptacle outlet and 4 receptacles, right? Michael Hoffman, 2 duplex receptacles in a 2-gang box. How many receptacle outlets? Hey, Nihad El Sharif, good to see you again. You have 1 receptacle outlet and 4 receptacles. Travis, I'm going to stop with you because I agree 100%. You have 1 receptacle outlet and you have 4 receptacles because you have 2 duplex. Each receptacle has 2 contact points on it, on 1 yoke. So each receptacle is a multiple receptacle. So a duplex receptacle has 2 receptacles. And if you have 2 duplexes in 1 box, you've got 4 receptacles, 4, and you have 1 receptacle outlet. Very good. I like it. Good job, Travis. All right. And you went out on that limb. What I really like is the fact that you went out there. So some people probably aren't answering because they're afraid to be wrong. You were good job. All right, so 210.52. The section provides requirements for 15 and 20 amp receptacle outlets. Remember, we just said doesn't cover USB, doesn't cover any other size ampere rating of a receptacle outlet. The receptacles required by this section shall be in addition to any receptacle that may be a part of a luminaire or an appliance. So you may see, that's a good question. Well, I'm going to say it. So you may see an appliance like a kitchen stove or something of that nature that has a receptacle built in. You might see another appliance that maybe is not a stove, because the reason I hesitated with a stove is because it would be a fixed appliance and you wouldn't count that as wall space. In fact, we have provisions where you're not going to be providing a standard 15, 20 amp receptacle behind that stove. But you may have another appliance that has a built-in receptacle, or a luminaire. So the provisions, the requirements in 210.52 do not, you wouldn't replace the required receptacle by a receptacle that's built into an appliance or a luminaire. Controlled by a listed wall-mounted control device in accordance with 210.70A1, exception number 1. So there's another 210.70A1 is your, remember 210.70 are your lighting requirements, and 210.70A1 is for habitable rooms, kitchens, laundry areas, and bathrooms. And exception number 1 says, in other than kitchens, laundry areas, and bathrooms, 1 or more receptacles controlled by a listed wall-mounted control device shall be permitted in lieu of lighting outlets. So the reason you are not counting, the reason the receptacle requirements in 210.52 are not or in addition to that, is because that is a receptacle that is dedicated to lighting. It's there for a different reason, and you're switching it, you're turning it on and off to turn a light on and off. So you can't count it as one of the required receptacles because it's got a separate function. Make sense? Okay. Located within cabinets or cupboards. So if you have a cabinet or a cupboard and there's a receptacle that's in there, it's not there for general use. It's probably there for some other reason. It could be there for maybe for phone charging or some other reason, but it's not meant. If you have a receptacle that's in a cabinet or a cupboard, is not one of those receptacles that is necessary for or not required by 210.52. I'm reading your comment. You said that you think it's 2 multiple receptacles with 4 contact points. Now let's look at what a multiple, let's take a look at the definition for receptacle, Michael. Receptacle, blue, 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 blue. I gotta go to the R's. Now, does that mean that it's a pirate? R's? Receptacle outlets, receptacle, where is receptacle? Receptacle, identical. There's receptacle. So a receptacle says a contact device installed at the outlet for the connection of an attachment plug or for the direct connection of electrical utilization equipment designed to mate with the corresponding contact device. It says a single receptacle is a single contact device with no other contact device on the same yoke. A multiple receptacle is 2 or more contact devices on the same yoke. So yes, Michael, I would agree. I would agree with you that a multiple receptacle, which would be a duplex, and look at the informational note. The informational note says a duplex receptacle is an example of a multiple receptacle that has 2 receptacles on the same yoke. Because a receptacle is a contact device. Okay, there it is. The beginning of the sentence for receptacle says a contact device installed at the outlet. So a receptacle is a contact device, and a multiple receptacle has 2 or more contact devices, so 2 or more receptacles on the same yoke. All right, I'm glad we went down that little road. Very important. So you may say, why are you spending some time here? I understand a receptacle and a receptacle outlet. I don't necessarily agree with you, Michael. I don't think the informational note is in conflict because it says a receptacle is a contact device. And a duplex has 2 contact devices. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. And that's just the way I read it. So it's a receptacle is a contact device. I'm going to go back to this definition because this is, I'm just going to throw it up here real quick. Receptacle. Okay, so, not the chat. So it says a contact device installed at the outlet. So a receptacle is a contact device that's installed at the outlet for the connection of an attachment plug. So it's the contact device. And it says down at the bottom sentence, a multiple receptacle is 2 or more contact devices. So that would be 2 or more receptacles because a receptacle is a contact device on the same yoke. And the informational note says a duplex receptacle is an example of a multiple receptacle that has two receptacles on the same yoke. That's sort of how I read it. I don't know. Anyway, let's get back to 210.52. This is what I love about the language. All right, so 210.52, we're talking, keep moving things. All right, so, and now located within cabinets or cupboards, located more than 5.5 feet above the floor. So if I have, like say in this room here, if I had a receptacle up higher than 5.5 feet, that receptacle would not count as one of the required receptacles in 210.52. Why is it? You've got, this is the way I perceive it. This is the way I read this. That receptacle is there for general use, whether you're plugging in a vacuum sweeper, a heater, or whatever it is. That's what it's there for. If you have a receptacle that is installed for a specific purpose, the first one was part of a luminaire. Or, I'm sorry, the first, part of a luminaire or an appliance. Or how about the second one, where you have the wall-mounted control device? If you're turning that receptacle on and off to turn a light on and off, thinking you're going to be plugging in a lamp, and that's going to meet the requirements of 210.70. It's there for a different purpose. If I put a receptacle high up on the wall, it's probably there for a television or some other, maybe Christmas tree lights, whatever it is. It's there for a different purpose. So the intent of the receptacles that are installed in rooms are for general use, meaning your vacuum sweepers and other things. There's no specific intended purpose for that receptacle. And if it's above 5.5 feet, you're not going to be reaching it for that use anyway. So those are the four items that you can say, if it's one of these four, you are not going to count that as one of the required receptacles. And the permanently installed, and then now go into a separate paragraph here. Permanently installed electric baseboard heaters. So think about this. If you have electric baseboards permanently that are installed permanently around a room to provide, I mean, if it's a heater, it's providing heat. And that takes up wall space, right? Now, there's probably products on the market. I have no clue. I don't make, I don't sell, I don't install these baseboard heaters. So I'm making an assumption based upon the language. It says permanently installed electric baseboard heaters that are equipped with a factory installed receptacle outlet or outlets provided as a separate assembly by the manufacturer are permitted as the required outlet or outlets for the wall space utilized by those permanently installed heaters. And it says the receptacle outlets are not to be connected to the heater circuit. So I'm making an assumption that at some point, I don't know when that language went in, but at some point when those products were on the market, inspectors and installers and others were like, where do I put this receptacle? And the manufacturers of that equipment said, look, I'm going to provide these other separate receptacles, outlets that can be used for general purpose that aren't a part of the heater element because they're taking up the space. And you need a receptacle on that wall because and these heaters probably taking up a good considerable amount of space on the wall. So this just recognizes that, okay, if that permanently installed electric baseboard heater is equipped with these receptacle outlets, then you can count those because they're intended to be used for general purpose. Make sense? So it's just the acknowledgement of that. All right, splitting definitely makes it two receptacles on one strap. Yeah, Fred. I would agree with you. And I think that's why the correlation is made in the informational note. And Michael, I know it says contact device and the informational note says receptacle. So I would agree with you. There's a leap being made that a contact device is a receptacle. And the leap is made in that informational note connecting those two together. But I agree with you, Fred, too. Those are two receptacles on one yoke. All right. See, there's just the defined term. There is the code did not disappoint with regard to differences of opinion. All right, so that's the parent text. So this tells you basically that this section provides the requirements and it gives you the scope of the section. All right. Now, there are, you have A, general provisions, B, small appliances, C, countertops and work surfaces, D, bathrooms, E, outdoor outlets, F is laundry areas, and then G is your basements, garages, and accessory buildings. And then finally, the last two, H is hallways, and I is foyers. All right, so you have all of those first level subdivisions that provide the requirements for dwelling units, for 15 and 20 amp, 125 volt receptacle outlets. Now, the general provisions, A, this is where it tells you that in every kitchen, family room, dining room, living room, parlor, library, den, sunroom, bedroom, recreation room, or similar room or area of dwelling units. So you're dealing with a dwelling unit. There's a laundry list of rooms that you are considering. Receptacle outlets shall be installed in accordance with the general provisions specified in A1 through A4. Now, what does that mean? So in all of these rooms, you have spacing. A1 is spacing. A2 is the wall space, what's considered wall space. Because remember, in the spacing, it tells you receptacles have to be installed no point measured horizontally along the floor of any wall space can be more than 6 foot from a receptacle outlet. So we want to make sure that whatever wall space, no point can be more than 6 feet from a receptacle outlet. You can put more receptacles, right? This is a bare minimum requirement. And as a homeowner, I would say please exceed these bare minimum requirements. But we're just talking bare minimum requirements. The spacing is no point measured horizontally along the floor line can be more than 6 foot from a receptacle outlet. That's the spacing along the floor line. Now, 2 says wall space. It helps us understand what is wall space. Because, for example, if you have, let's look at item 1 and 2, any 2 foot or more in width, any space, 2 feet or more. So if I have, say, a pillar that is 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot, that would not be considered wall space. But if I have a pillar that is 2 foot or more wide, 2 foot or more by 2 foot or more, say 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot, each of those is wall space. Unbroken along the floor line by doorways. So if I have 1 foot, a door, and 1 foot, nothing on that wall is considered wall space because I need at least 2 feet on either side of that door or on one side of the door. I don't measure the doorway. So it says unbroken along the floor line by doorways and similar openings. So whether it's a door or a walkway or whatever it is, if you have a space where there is no wall and that breaks up the entire wall space, you're not considering that broken space as part of the wall space. Fireplaces, stationary appliances. Now, stationary, so it's important to understand what is a stationary appliance or a fixed appliance, right? So you've got to go back to the defined terms for fixed and stationary appliances. 1 foot square pillar is 4 feet of wall and needs a receptacle. It's unbroken at the floor line. Ooh, Michael, I like what you're saying. You're right. So if I have a pillar and it's 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot, that would need a receptacle because you're measuring all the ways around. It's unbroken wall space. Boy, that's a good one. I don't know what size pillar. You would need a pillar that doesn't add up. All 4 sides adds up to 2 feet. 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches. That's still 2 feet. 2 foot or more. So if you have a 6-inch, wow, I got to wrap my head around this one, Michael. You just blew up my world there. What 5.9 inches square? Man, I wonder how many of those pillars out there that do not have a receptacle. So if I have a pillar that is a solid, if it's a 6, man, if it's solid 2x4, I would have to put a receptacle outlet on that pillar. All right. See, this is why it's very important that we read the details. Very good. Thank you, Michael. Good comment. All right. Any space 2 foot or more in width and unbroken along the floor line by doorways and similar openings, fireplaces, stationary appliances, and fixed cabinets that do not have countertops or similar work surfaces. So a fixed cabinet, I would say, if I had, and I remember when this went in, if you had like bookcases, or if you had, if you had bookcases, like say in a library, and the bookcases were along the entire wall, as long as there wasn't like a built-in desk, you wouldn't count that wall as wall space. You wouldn't need to put a receptacle in the bookcase or in the floor, right? To serve this requirement, because that would not be counted as wall space. Fixed cabinets that do not have countertops. So, and then fixed or stationary appliances. No, stationary appliances, not fixed appliances. It doesn't say fixed or stationary appliances. It just says stationary appliances. What about a fixed appliance? Is that a defined term? Appliance. I'm going to take a look at appliance. And is it I'm going to do a fixed appliance. F-I-X-E-D, fixed appliance. There's something in Article 100 that says no, there's no defined term for a fixed appliance. But I know in 210, like in 210.8, we had specifically called out fixed or stationary appliances. And I'm not sure if we do that in other areas, but so it's only a stationary appliance, not a fixed appliance. Fixed, stationary, and portable. But Michael, is there a defined term? There's no fixed defined term for a fixed appliance, stationary appliance. There's no defined terms for that. Now, if we remember, if there is no defined term, we go to Webster, right, Merriam? So what is the Webster dictionary for fixed? No, stationary. 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 Stationary, definition, is fixed in a station. Oh, man. Oh, you're saying fixed is a defined term, so let's look up fixed. Getting rid of stationary, and I'm going to go to fixed. Let's take a look at fixed. There's a fixed pier. Fixed, are you sure? E, B, C, D, E, F. E, F. F comes before G, right? I don't see. There's fitting. Michael, I do not see. I see. Oh, there it is. Fixed as applies to equipment. Equipment that is fastened or otherwise secured at a specific location. And then there's fixed in place. Now, is there a definition for stationary? Let's look up at the S. Stationary. All right, stationary. Equipment that is not moved from one place to another in normal use. So if we go back to the 210.52, and it says for wall space, stationary appliances. It doesn't say fixed appliances. So it wouldn't apply to fixed in place appliances. It would only, you wouldn't count, if you had a fixed in place appliance, it would still count as wall space. But if it's a stationary appliance, it wouldn't count as wall space. Would you agree with that, Michael? And David Engelhardt. This is why terms are so important when you're implementing the language. So we had fireplaces, we have stationary appliances, and we have fixed cabinets. I don't know why we wouldn't have a fixed appliance. And you're right, a refrigerator is not fixed, but it is stationary. But if I had a stove or I had an appliance that was bolted in place, it was fixed in place, I would still count it for wall space because it's not stationary. Terms do rule the NEC, and people don't understand that. And here's what I think, Michael. I think we de-emphasize it because when we teach the code, we'll go through terms and we just go through definition after definition after definition. But what we should be doing is going through the requirements, and when the term is used, we should be going back to Article 100 to say, what does it mean? Because now the relevance of the term really comes out. And you'll understand, just like we're talking about here, we have a stationary appliance, and David is a valid point. What is an appliance? So you'd have to go back and look at the defined term for an appliance. And what do we mean by stationary? And what if the appliance is fixed in place? Which is different because there's two different defined terms. If I have a fixed in place appliance, I have to count that as wall space. If I have a stationary appliance, I don't count it as wall space. That's right, Fred. No, fixed in place is stationary, but stationary isn't always fixed. I would agree. So it says stationary appliances and fixed cabinets. Doesn't say stationary cabinets. I don't know. And we always use these terms, but we use this section, but take a look at the terms. Tell me what I'm, if am I off base? The space occupied by, now the second item under wall space, the space occupied by fixed panels in walls, excluding sliding panels. Wall space shall include the space occupied by fixed panels in walls, but you exclude sliding panels. So I saw a question up above about total glass wall, 18-foot, ooh, slider. So if you had a glass wall and there was no sliders, then you would count it as wall space. But what it says is the space occupied by a fixed panel in walls, it happens to be a glass panel, and it excludes sliding panels. So if your entire wall slides or moves, then you wouldn't count that as wall space. You would not put a receptacle in that wall. And remember, if you can't put it in the wall, if it's all glass, where do you put it? You put it in the floor, the floor, and it has to be within so many inches of the wall. Make sense? 18 inches, I think it has to be within 18 inches. Okay, so any space. And then the space occupied by a fixed panel in walls. And then third is the space afforded by fixed room dividers, such as freestanding bar-type counters or railings. So it says a wall space. As used in this section, a wall space shall include the space afforded by fixed room dividers, such as freestanding bar-type counters or railings. That's wall space. So if I have a railing that divides my room, or if I have a bar type of a counter, I would count that as wall space. If it's a railing with, rails, whatever, and I can't put a receptacle in it, I would have to put it in the floor receptacle, which is number 3. Receptacle outlets in or on floors shall not be counted as part of the required number of receptacle outlets unless located within 18 inches of the wall. So if I'm going to place a receptacle in the floor to meet the requirements for placement of a receptacle, it has to be within 18 inches of the wall. Just when you thought 210.52 was simple, you get into this stuff and you find it's not very simple at all. You see what I'm saying? It's one thing to just say, I've got a wall here and how many receptacles do I need on it? Well, it's a piece of cake. The moment you have a glass wall, the moment you have a railing in the middle as a divider, the moment you have any of these others, you go into a kitchen or you go in and you have a fixed in place appliance, or you have a fixed in place stationary appliance, not fixed. But if it's a fixed in place appliance and it's not stationary, now you get into, well, do I count it or do I not count it? And then you get into the debate. If you have a bookshelves, now it gets a little bit more complicated. Felix Sandoval, thanks for joining, buddy. We got Colombia in the house. And I'm going to be in Colombia. I'm going to be in Bogota in, I think, September. So we're going to have to hook up, buddy. And we're going to have to get you, and we're going to have to break bread together. So I'm going to be in an electrical safety workshop. All right, so you got floor receptacles. And then in item 4 are your countertops and similar work surface receptacle outlets. Receptacles installed for countertop and similar work surface as specified in 210.52c shall not be considered as receptacle outlets required by 210.52a. Make sense? So receptacles installed for countertops and similar work surfaces. So in 210.52c, the required receptacles there do not count as the required receptacles in 210.52a. But then you'd have to look and see what counts as wall space and what doesn't count as wall space. I'm going to try to avoid the border customs TV video, Mr. Froming. Thank you for showing up. So, all right. So A, I think we've covered A and the parent text. So we got through the general provisions. We talked about the spacing. We talked about the importance of understanding the defined terms of stationary and fixed. And appliances, receptacles, the defined term for a receptacle, receptacle outlet. So all of that, I feel comfortable with that. Then we got the floor receptacles. We know we got to be within 18 inches for it to count. And if you have to leverage the floor to put your receptacle because the wall can't take the receptacle, maybe it's glass or whatever, then that receptacle has to be within 18 inches of the wall. And then you have the countertops, the fact that you have the requirements in 210.52 Charlie, which remember, that's your countertops and work surfaces. Those do not count as one of the receptacles that are required by 210.52a. Wow. So, Mr. Hofkin, let me ask you a question. And Steve, and Fred, and Felix. If I have a bookcase, on, say this wall had a bookcase, which it sort of does. I mean, it's got a little bookcase there. But let's say that I had this whole wall as a bookcase and I had a 4 foot in the middle was a desk. 4 foot. Because of the requirements in 210.52 Charlie, it's a work surface, and it says that the receptacle has to be on or above, but not more than 20 inches above a countertop or work surface. So I would need a receptacle on top. Would I? Additionally, because of the 4 foot and the fact that it would be counted as wall space, right? Because in 210.52a2, it says fixed cabinets that do not have countertops or similar work surfaces. So if a fixed cabinet has a countertop or similar work surface, then you count it as wall space. You would need one underneath, Michael. Would you need one on top and one on the bottom? To me, because it says you, okay, so it says, Michael says, no, I disagree. Felix says, yes. And Steve Froming is like, what room are we in? We're in my office here. We're in an office, and I have bookcases on this wall. Imagine, if you would, a world of bookcases on this wall. And I've got 4 foot of a work surface. I would need a receptacle on top to serve the work surface. I'd also need a receptacle on the bottom underneath for a general purpose receptacle to meet the requirements in 210.52a. And it says wall space dictates. I agree with you, Felix. A work surface in a living room does not need a receptacle above the counter. Why not? Hold on. In every kitchen, family room, dining room, living room, parlor, den, sunroom, bedroom, blah, 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 blah. That's in A. So let's look at C, countertops and work surfaces. In kitchens, pantries, breakfast rooms, dining rooms, I'm not in a living room, dining rooms, and similar areas. Okay. Okay. So, you know what, Steve Froming? You're right. Okay. So, if I'm in my office, I'm in the office, that work surface would not need one on top, but I would need one on the bottom. Okay. If this was my dining room, if it was my dining room and I had a bookcase in there or cabinets with a work surface, then I would need one on the top and one on the bottom. That's why Steve Froming said, "What room are you in?" He was smarter than he looked. A living room work surface does not need a receptacle above the counter. I agree with you, Michael, but if it's in the dining room, it would. I'd need one above and I would need one below. Because it says kitchen, if it's in a pantry as well. Like I have in my pantry, and I don't know if there's a receptacle underneath, but I have a work surface. And then I have a cabinet over here that goes top ceiling to floor, and then I have a work surface where we do the laundry stuff. And there's nothing underneath. And what I have underneath, I have 2 bins for the dog food. So that's where we keep our dog food. And we keep a little laundry basket under there, and we keep a little garbage can under there. So I have a bin for dog food. I have a bin for laundry, like the dirty rags from the kitchen and stuff. And then I have a garbage pail, can. Because it's a work surface, because it's in a laundry or a pantry. No, it's not a laundry. It says in kitchens and pantries. I wouldn't call it a pantry. I'd call it a laundry area. So I would not need it there either. Only in kitchens, pantries, breakfast rooms, dining rooms, and similar areas. Oh, Fred. Fred, you had to ask it. How deep is countertop to be considered working space? I don't believe we have a definition of a countertop or a work surface. Well, we do. Hold on. Countertop. Countertop. I'm going to tell you about my countertop. It's so deep, can't believe. Countertop. It's just me. Watch out. Where is my countertop? There is no defined, controlled. COU, right? Countertop. It is a defined term. So a countertop is a fixed or stationary surface typically intended for food preparation and serving, personal lavation, or laundering, or a similar surface that presents a routine risk of spillage of larger. There is no dimensions associated with it. And a work surface is a defined term. So let's see if there's anything for work surface. I remember when we put that in. A work surface. It says a fixed, stationary, or portable surface typically intended for dry use and for tasks other than food prep, personal lavation, or laundering that presents there's no depth. If you don't nail down the top, then maybe it's not a work surface. Got an upper and lower cabinets, the rest together, and 6 inches of setback. Serve a wall or serve a counter. Michael says in a dining room, once you what? Once you serve the counter work surface, you don't need a receptacle below. I don't know that I agree with that, because the reason I don't agree with that is because in 210.52a, the reason I say that, Michael, is because in 210.52a, it says, receptacles installed for countertop and similar work surfaces, as specified in 210.52C, shall not be considered as the receptacle outlets required by 210.52A. So if you put in the dining room a receptacle to meet the requirements in 210.52C for the top of the countertop or the work surface, you cannot count it as meeting the requirements for 210.52A because it specifically says it in 4. If your logic holds, then the kitchen floor must have receptacles in the floor wherever there are kitchen cabinets. It's not my logic. It's the words. I'm just going by the language. It says receptacles installed for countertop and similar work surfaces as specified in 210.52C shall not be considered as the receptacle outlets required by 210.52A. I don't know how you get around that. How do you not think? I'm just reading the words. Here, I'll put it on the screen. It says it right here. Receptacles installed for countertop and similar work surfaces as specified in C shall not be considered as the receptacle outlets required by A. So how do you get out of that, Michael? How do you get out of that language? Do the laws of physics cease to exist in your dining room? In your kitchen? Identical. Yeah, so you're right. So Fred, you're right. So what is wall space? Any space, let's go back to the wall space, 2 or foot more in width and unbroken along the floor line by doorways and similar opens, fireplaces, stationary appliances, and fixed cabinets. Well, here's the thing, Fred. Fixed cabinets that don't have a countertop. So if my kitchen has a countertop, those are fixed cabinets, but they have a countertop. You count that as a wall space. If I need to serve the wall space in a dining room, then I need to serve the wall space in the kitchen. Right, Michael? I don't disagree with you because 210, I'm just going by the language. Now, I would agree that that's a challenge. But I'm just reading the language. Remember, don't shoot the messenger. If we don't like the language, then we need to fix it because I don't know how you get out of it. When it specifically says receptacles installed for countertops and similar work surfaces shall not be considered as receptacle outlets required by 210.52A. I believe it makes a challenge for kitchens. Now let's look at the small appliances. Let's look at the small appliance in the kitchen, pantry, breakfast room, dining room, or similar area. The 2 or more small appliance branch circuits shall serve all wall and floor receptacle outlets covered by 210.52A. All countertop outlets covered by 210.52C and receptacle outlets, exception 1 and exception 2. So even in A1, in B1, for the small appliance, it says you might have wall and floor receptacle outlets that are required by 210.52A. And the countertop outlets covered by 210.52C. So that even implies that they don't cancel each other. I don't think it does. Well, so you're thinking, Michael, that the wall space is now above the kitchen or countertop work surface. It does say, okay, let's think about that. It says not more than 5.5 feet. So as long as the receptacle, I think you got it, Michael. As long as the receptacle is not greater than 5.5 feet above the floor. As long as you don't exceed the 5.5 foot number. I'm gonna have to go in my kitchen and measure. I'm gonna need a ruler for that one. And you know what? It's over an hour. So here's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna continue this next week. We're gonna continue this discussion. I did not think 21052 was gonna be this messy. But I think the 5.5 foot rule does it. For next week, I want all of you to go into your kitchen and measure for that receptacle placement that's on the wall. If it's less than 5.5 feet, then you've met that requirement, in my opinion. As long as it's not in the cabinet or in the cupboard, we're on to something and we're learning. And I love it because we should all be a sponge. It's not until you really dig into the language that you really understand the practical application of the code. And I love the dialogue. I love the input. Michael Hofkin, you are the man. Fred B., Mr. Wages, with those magic grits from the Magic Beanstalk. and every David Englehart, NHZXBOI, Steve Froming in the house. Very cool one-liner. What room are we in? I love that. I love it. So thanks for all of the great dialogue. And Felix Sandoval, all the ways from Colombia. Once work surface or countertops are there, you will need receptacles on top of them. I would agree. Depends upon the room, though. All right, everybody. Unfortunately, we must bring this session to an end. Thank you for everything. Thanks for what you do for the electrical industry, for electrical safety. And remember to stay safe, and please, by all means, stay healthy. See you next week. We're going to continue 21052.